Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Torian Houston, Associate Athletics Director for Compliance at Rice University. And thank you for taking the time to join us for the second Moaa webinar of the academic year, Successfully Transitioning in Athletics. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I would like to make you all aware of. First, if you haven't already done so, make sure you renewed your Moaa membership and encourage your colleagues to do the same. Second, just as a reminder that if you have not logged into the Moaa community, I would encourage everyone to do so. The community is a prime location for many shared resources, job postings, and to access it, simply visit moa.nacta.com. Lastly, if you have any questions regarding Moaa membership in general, please don't hesitate to contact either Alexis Scott or Julie Work in the NACTA National Office at 440-892-4000. Now for today's webinar. We are extremely fortunate to have with us Dr. Christine Kelly, Senior Associate AD for Varsity Sports and Senior Women Administrator at Dartmouth College to discuss the topic at hand. Dr. Kelly has been with the Big Green since June 2018, and her hire served as a historic moment for the institution, as she is the first African American to hold an administrative position in the athletic department. Prior to arriving at Dartmouth, Dr. Kelly served as the athletics director at King State from 2016 to 2018, where she oversaw an athletics department that served over 300 student athletes competing in 18 sports at the Division III level. For her appointment at King State, she served as a senior women administrator at St. Augustine's University in Raleigh, North Carolina from 2009 to 2016, where she supervised the day-to-day operations for 14 sports within the athletic department. In addition to her departmental duties, Dr. Kelly was also an assistant professor as well as the department chair for the university's sports management program. A 2000 graduate of Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, with a double major in physical education and communication arts. Dr. Kelly began her career in college athletics as an academic counselor and graduate assistant at the University of Tennessee from 2001 through 2002. She earned her master's at Tennessee in human performance and sports studies, completing her degree while also starting a new job at her alma mater as the sport information director from 2002 until 2009. Dr. Kelly would go on to earn her doctorate of education in sports management from the United States Sports Academy in 2014. No stranger to college athletics, Dr. Kelly was a member of Johnson C. Smith's softball team, where she earned all rookie honors before captaining the squad her senior year. An active participant on conference and NCAA committees, her service has included stints on the NCAA Women of the Year Committee, the NCAA Division II Track and Field Committee, the CIAA Management Council, and several CIAA championship committees. Last but certainly not least, she's a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and a native of the island of St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Dr. Kelly, or should I say Christine, as a friend, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Torian. I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share whatever knowledge I can share.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we already have a few questions prepared for you here, but for those who are in attendance, if you have a question throughout the course of the webinar, feel free to use the chat feature on the bottom right of your screen. Please note that there will be a Q&A session towards the end of our conversation, and the majority of questions will be addressed during that time period. Now let's get to it. So, Dr. Kelly, well, excuse me, Christine, you've
Yeah.
been at Dartmouth a little more than 7 months, and from what I can tell from your social media account, as well as several conversations I've had with colleagues, you seem to be fitting in quite well there. What's your process about learning the culture of an organization beforehand, and what type of checks do you have in place at the 30, 60, and 90-day aspect? And then once you're brought on board, how much time do you spend living in the culture before you try to add or make changes to it?
So I would say initially, let me just to say to everyone, I apologize. I came back from my cruise. I've been on a cruise for the last 9 days,
Don't
and I
rub
have
it
a
in.
cold. So I just want to say if my voice is a little raspy, that's why. But to answer your question, I think the research for an organization before you get there is so crucial. It's important to know whether or not you will fit in. Some people, and again, I totally understand if you're a part-time employee and this is a full-time position for you, you're obviously going to jump in, to feet first. However, for people like me who've kind of been in the business for, over a decade, actually closer to 2 decades, is I had the opportunity to really do some research about Dartmouth and figure out whether or not this is some place that I could be. I asked lots of questions. because I do believe in an interview process. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. One of the questions that I always ask is, tell me, what is it about my resume or my CV that intrigued you to interview me? And that sometimes takes interviewers by storm to say, well, wow, you're asking me that? Yeah, so tell me, why are you interested in me? So that's one of the things that I ask, kind of going forward. As you're there, assess for comfort. Is this a place where you feel comfortable? Is this a place where people seem happy? Do they seem like they're ready to leave? The person that you're replacing, where have they gone? The person I replaced, Megan Sobel, she had been here for 15 years and left to become an athletic director at a high school. She just wanted a change. So I knew it wasn't that she was having an awful time here. And I just asked questions to people that are around. I know you, Torian, used to be at Dartmouth, so I called you and was like, hey, what do you think about this? And I called as many people as I possibly could to just find out about the organization. And then as far as the 30, 60, and 90-day plan, I have what I like to call the analyze, align, and act. So in the first 30 days, you need to analyze the organization and see where you are. Conduct fact-finding meetings to figure out what exists, what's in place. Do the basics like setting up your communication, your email, your phone, the travel. How do you do those types of things? Conduct those one-on-one meetings. And then as you get into your 60 days, you start aligning everything that you've learned in those first 30 days. Because to me, you want to be an ambassador for the organization that you work with. And in order to do that, you have to be able to walk around and get to know people. And then lastly, with 90 days and beyond, you kind of go through that cycle of figuring out what I've done, what I've learned in the first 60 days and putting that into place. And you just kind of keep going around because everything's changed. We're in a very evolutionary type of environment. So things continue to change and you have to change as well. So you continue to analyze, you align yourself with the goals of the organization, and then you act on that and you keep going around.
Oh, that's great. So analyze, align, and act.
Yes.
And that's a great knowledge base, and you actually you kind of answer one of our next questions, and we'll kind of stay with it a little bit in terms of some of those questions that you're asking people around you as well as yourself when you're assessing the strengths and the growth opportunities for an organization. Especially when you're coming in, you don't know, and you're trying to really get the lay of the land. So you talked about it in terms of where are people gone. You talked about are people happy here. What's the cultural fit? Are there any other additional questions that you are asking yourself as well about, okay, when I'm looking at this next opportunity, what are some things that I really in order to figure out, okay, where are we strong at and where do we see a need for improvement?
So one of the first questions is, what's our end goal? So everything that we're trying to do has to align with our vision and our mission, or our athletic director's vision and mission for the department as well as the institution. And then we have to ask ourselves, what's the end goal? So the different people that I'm meeting with, are you asking me for something just for asking for its sake because someone else in the league has it? Or is it really truly trying to enhance the student athlete experience and helping us achieve that goal? So that's a question that I ask myself, as well as asking the staff that report to me, which I can tell you, I have 12 sports that I oversee, which in essence, I was doing the math today, it's about 250 plus student athletes and 35 plus just coaches, not even including compliance and varsity athletic communication. So I have a kind of somewhat of a big portfolio. But with that being the case, there are multiple personalities that you're dealing with, and you're asking those people the goals that we have that our athletic director has set. Are the things that you're asking me for, are those lining up with that? In our department goal here, or our mantra, is DRIVE, which is development, resilience, ingenuity, valor, and excellence. So anything that we're doing, we ask those questions. Does it line up with one of those 5 letters in our mantra?
Awesome. No, those are great. And you talked about like the end goal. And oftentimes when we're looking at the next job, we've kind of looked at our current position and says, oh, well, I feel like I've achieved that end goal here of what I wanted to accomplish. And now it's time for me to get to the next level. And we often say that like this is the next level job, or this job is going to get me to that next level that I picture myself at. Do you have like a definition? Like how would you define a next level job, and what factors into it? Is that just something that we kind of fabricate in our heads in terms of like this position is going to be the position that gets me exactly where I need to be?
That's a very good question. I know we don't have the whole hour to talk about it. We really could talk about that for the entire hour. But one, I'll say it goes with intuition, and really depends on where you are, whether it's personally or professionally. So if you're a mid-level manager, it may be that your next goal is to be, I don't know, an associate AD, a senior associate, or an AD, depends on kind of where you are, what interests you. But you have to use that intuition. And while you're there, you have to understand that what one person has, you can't mirror your goals based on what someone else has done or what their path is. And a lot of people do that to say, okay, well, surely, and I'll just use someone else's, but I was an SID. I should go into an assistant AD, an associate AD, and then an AD. That's the path, and that's what should happen. That's not how this world works. That's not how our business works. And sometimes you have to be moved out to move up. And sometimes that means taking a position somewhere else in athletics that you're not necessarily comfortable with, but that's going to help you get to whatever that next level is. For me, taking the position at Dartmouth, it was more personal and professional at the same time, where I have a team of people that I work alongside who help run our athletics program. So it's not just all on me as an AD. You're the be all, the end all of everything. You're always on. Whereas now I can take a cruise for 9 days and things, still happen. But then I'll also tell people, you really need to bloom where you're planted and go where you're celebrated and not tolerated. And I use that all the time to just say, the job that you're hired to do, you need to do it and do it well. If someone else can't give you more responsibility unless they know you're doing the job you're supposed to be doing. And then also recognizing that your next may not be at your current place. So don't get frustrated. If you feel like you're getting bored, you're not happy, you're not being challenged, you approach this with your management or your supervisor, and it just doesn't seem like there's any upward mobility, then it may be time for you to go somewhere else. But again, don't just chase the dollar. For some people, it may be location. You may be happier being in a bigger city, smaller town, closer to home because of family responsibilities. Take all those things into consideration when you consider your quote unquote next. But always trust your intuition.
Awesome. No, that's great. We were talking beforehand, like that bloom where you're planted quote. And that really resonates, where if people are investing in your development and in your growth, you don't necessarily have to transition or move to another spot in order to feel as if your value is being taken seriously in your current position. So, and talking about that, is there, that aspect where a person can transition too much, where it becomes a negative, or it makes it seem like, okay, I'm looking at the transition, I'm looking at the next, and I feel like they've kind of cultivated me and I'm moving on to the next spot, but then you kind of move quickly. Is there a negative, or is there any positives to that in any way?
So what I will say, and it's funny that you say that, because the person who hired me, he and I had this conversation probably the first couple months that I was here. And it was along the lines of transitioning too much. For coaches, that's usually a part of what they do. They go from one to the other. If you're in football and you start off as a GA and then you're quality control, then you go to, position coach, and you kind of go where the job is. But in administration, you really need to be careful to not leave jobs after a year. 2 years is kind of 2 to 3 years is usually a good number, but try your best to not just job hop, because at that point it's showing that showing your potential employer that you're not committed to being there. And have you used your time well, where you were able to make change and to leave a legacy or to leave a change there at that department? And if you continue to switch jobs every year, your future employer may say, this person isn't committed, let me go to somebody else. And you never want to give anyone an out or a reason to not hire you. So I would say, make an impression while you're there, work as hard as you can, learn as much as you can, volunteer as much as you can, and that next job will come. Now, let me just say, if you are part-time and after you've been at this job for 6 months, another job came that's full-time, then obviously I would suggest to you to take the full-time job, because you got to pay your bills. But and if it's working, then no, you need to sit tight for a little bit. Don't just take every job, because the thing is, every job isn't a good job, and every job is meant for you. So really be cautious, do your research, as we talked about earlier, prior to just job hopping in such a way.
Oh, that's good. And as we were talking about it, I was at Dartmouth for a short period of time before I left to go to my next place. Like it's okay. So it does, you have to be careful. And I really applaud my supervisor for having that conversation with me beforehand. I think that's where it comes in terms of having those relationships where
Yes.
they'll recognize, if it's time for you to make that transition. They'll also caution you. But I had several great supervisors who often talked about the fact that they left the decision with me, but ultimately guided me and made sure that they understood my reasoning behind taking jobs or
Yes.
making the transition, ensuring that I was positioning myself for future opportunities down the line, knowing that a quick decision or an early decision in my career did not affect me or prohibit me from reaching those goals that I had set for myself. So that's a great bit of knowledge, and so I really appreciate that. So talking
No problem.
about every job is not a good job, or every job that everything that's on paper isn't what it seems. So you've been at virtually
Mhm.
every single level of college athletics. I mean, you've been at both private and public institutions. You've been at a Power Five. You've been at Division 1 through 3, historically black colleges and universities, and now at an Ivy. So, what are some of the misconceptions or false pretenses that you have found at each of those levels that people often kind of assume about these particular areas, but don't realize that it's not what it seems?
So I'll start with HBCUs, and it's funny as you were reading off all those different places. I haven't honestly, I really didn't even think about it that I've been to all of the different divisions, and wow, I really did. So thanks for letting me know that, Steve. I will say from historically black colleges, there's this lesser than, and again we're talking about misconceptions and myths at this point. That there's that HBCUs are lesser than, that you're not going to be. It's a second chance type of institution, that you're not committed or you're not academically prepared if you got in there or if you graduated from there. That is absolutely not true. Because again, here is this HBCU graduate that's now at an Ivy League institution in a senior level administrative role. So clearly not the truth. Division 3, there's this thought process that you're not a talented athlete. When I have seen, and again, I can only speak about Keene State and some of the institutions we played in, the NESCAC and the NUMAC. These young ladies and young men are some fierce competitors, and I would put them up against any Division 1, Division 2 institution that's out, scholarship institution that's out there. So I hate that misconception that those athletes aren't as talented because they chose to go Division 3. And then lastly, as far as Ivy League schools, they're not all elite white males. They're just not. I mean, at Dartmouth, from a person of color standpoint, the entire institution has 40% per people of color. That doesn't necessarily mean just black people, but obviously Asians, Hispanic, so on and so forth. But they're all not elite white males. I mean, we have, just even at Dartmouth, there's a push to be able to increase our level of diversity from students from lower socioeconomic statuses. Let me tell you, if I could have gotten into Dartmouth or some sort of Ivy League school when I was in high school and understood the benefits that exist there, where you have if your family makes under $100,000, you can go to school for free, I would have jumped all over that. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions that exist, but at the end of the day, there's a college or university for everyone, and it's to me a great accomplishment to be able to attend, graduate, and or work at any one of those institutions. So hats off to anyone if you're working at any of those levels: public, private, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, junior college, you name it. I think it's a great accomplishment to even do that. So please don't succumb or think to that all of those misconceptions are true, because they're not.
Right. Right. No, I could completely agree. In terms of where you're looking at it from the aspect of who's in charge, who you're going to learn from, who
Mm-hmm.
is pouring into you in terms of the opportunity to really see things
Right.
at a different level. And because in essence, when you get those experiences, then you can go on and move forward, and you realize that, well, I've done that at that level, and so yeah, there's maybe a few more commas, or maybe there's a few more people involved in the process, but not necessarily
Right.
one where you feel as if that, okay, because I'm now at this new level, or at this the attention is more so on me in this role, that it's foreign to me in terms of my ability to complete my work. So I appreciate that in terms of just showing those misconceptions, and really showing that there's value in every single facet of our college athletic experience.
Now, let me say this. I do enjoy being at Dartmouth with those extra commas and zeros. Let me just make it clear. Because it makes it a little bit easier to do certain things. But I will say that the challenges that I experienced at, the HBCUs helped me develop patience, resourcefulness, just growth in so many different areas. So when you get to a situation like this at Dartmouth where there are a lot more zeros, I'm like, oh, wow, there's 10 people to do this one job, whereas in the past, it was one person doing 10 jobs. So I'm doing all right today.
Indeed. Yeah, no, more money. They say more money, more problems. I don't know if that's really
Which
true in
is
these
true.
circumstances.
It depends, but in certain instances, I'm all right.
So, as you know, it's never possible to climb or achieve without the support of mentors, advocates, and champions around you. Who are
Yep.
those people for you, and how did you go about selecting them, including them in your circle whenever you're thinking about transition or you're thinking about a process?
So that's a hard question just because there's so many people, men and women, that stand out that have been, just mentors in my life. And I don't want to call anyone's name and not call someone's name. And this is being recorded and it's people out there and they're like, she didn't call my name. But because I'm telling you, it will happen. But I will say, starting with Dr. Dorothy Cowdery Yancey, who was president emerita at both Johnson C. Smith University and Shaw University. She was my president when I was in school. She hired me literally, Torian. I graduated in May. I got hired to start teaching courses in August. So she saw something in me that she kept pushing me forward. So she has always been a mentor in my life. Obviously, my parents, my dad is deceased now, but between my mom and my dad, they pushed me. I mean, growing up, it was if you got a 90, why didn't you get a 92? If you got a 92, why did you get a 94? So they always pushed education in my life. And my dad actually, believe it or not, he was from Aruba, and he started what's called the Aruban Sports Organization that still exists today. So I feel like sport has always been in my life through my parents. And then, going beyond that, I have to recognize Monique A.J. Smith. So Monique Smith is the CEO of Seeds of Empowerment. But when I met her, I was still a student, softball player, little skinny girl back at Johnson C. Smith University. And when I started working as an SID, and I'll just talk a little bit about her, she recognized the fact that I had a pretty decent voice. And she started saying, okay, well, do you want to, announce volleyball championships? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll come help. So I volunteered there. That turned into me doing committee work and being on more committees. Then that turned into her saying, well, Christine, it seems like you're not growing at Johnson C. Smith. There's an opportunity at St. Aug. She pushed me there. And then lastly, when I was at Keene State, between her and Donnie Brooks, that's how I got to Dartmouth. And I'll say that because Harry Sheehy, who's the athletic director, wanted to he wanted to hire an ethnic minority female to be on his senior administrative team. He recognized that in his limitations, he didn't have that in his network. He didn't know any ethnic minority females. So he reached out to someone, Donnie Brooks. Donnie Brooks had a conversation with Monique Smith. Monique recommended me. Donnie thought I wouldn't be interested because I was a sitting athletic director. So I would say those people were really, really important. But I mean, there's so many other people. I don't want to miss anyone, but there's men and there's women. Your mentors don't have to look like you. Sometimes it's better if they don't, to a certain extent, because a lot of times as Black women, we aren't at the decision-making table. So you need to have that advocate who can speak on your behalf, because if you don't have a seat at the table, you need to get to know someone who does, who can speak on your behalf. And so I would just say that those few people, but there's so many other folks. People, if you're listening to this, I promise you, if you've been in my life, I appreciate you. I just don't have time to say everybody's name at this point.
That's a nice save, Christine, because I imagine there's some people just like, okay, I'm waiting for my name, I'm waiting for my name.
Right.
But you brought
exactly.
you brought up an excellent point when you talk about mentors and advocates, where sometimes you have those individuals who mentor you in terms of grooming you and ensuring that they're pushing you in different places. And the advocates are those who kind of speak out on your behalf, where maybe you don't have that, as you talked about, that seat at the table or that voice. And so once you get those individuals who know about it, they can advocate to say, you know what, here's somebody who you need to push, and here's somebody who needs to get this opportunity. And so, when I think about in terms of Donnie may not have necessarily been a mentor for you, but when it came time for the process for hiring, because he had the ear of Harry Sheehy, he could be an advocate in order to say, hey, look, I know this person. She's absolutely amazing. She'll do wonderful in this transition. And so I often look at those two differences. Like both are important. Not no one is more important than the other, but I think those distinctions are crucial. Like you need to have both in order to have that successful transition. And so I think that's a key point that I just wanted to highlight. So thank you so much for sharing that in terms of that process of how you came to be in this current role today. Um, so in terms of the current role, so we've been talking about a bit about the transitions where you're going from one place to the next. But as you know, in college athletics, there's often the time period where things happen around us, and then you end up being what I like to say voluntold to do things when there's roles and responsibilities in the athletic department still needs to move forward, and they're like, you know what, Christine, you're going to do this, or Torian, we need somebody to do this, so you're going to head up. So can you talk about managing the transition when the circumstances around you change, and you're forced to do something that you're maybe not necessarily comfortable with, or you're willing to do, but you just don't know how to go about doing it?
Oof, wow. So
Yeah,
how much time do you
yeah, I
say
know
we have?
that's a big one. That's a big one.
Because that's a huge a huge question, a loaded question with, and there are different answers as it comes along with that. A lot of times you're right, and I think I'm not sure if you use the term voluntold, but
Yeah,
sometimes we are
volunteer.
voluntold to be, to take on different responsibilities. When I was at Johnson C. Smith University, I craved being voluntold because I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could, but I was kept in a box. And I'm telling you, Torian, that hurt my heart to the core because that was my alma mater, and I wanted nothing more than to work at my alma mater and do the best job that I could. Now, that didn't happen, so I had to leave, which actually worked out well. I get to St. Augustine's University, and I'm doing all these different things. And in 2015, and I won't go into full detail, but I'll just say I was shifted from the athletic side to the academic side. And that hurt me to my core because athletics is my passion, is what I live, eat, breathe, and sleep for. And that was taken away from me. I was told I had to go, work full time as a department chair and assistant professor. And I went home and cried. I'm not going to lie, I did. And I probably cursed a little bit and did all of that. But the reality is you've got to do the best job you can. And like I said before, you've got to bloom where you're planted. And for me, I learned as much as I could about the academic side during that 1 year that I was in that position. I did the best job that I could, but I recognized that this is probably as far as I was going to go at that institution. And as hard as that may have been, it was time for me to move on to something else. But while you're there, use that opportunity to learn because you never know how that experience will help you further on. And while I was at St. Augustine's on the academic side, I took the opportunity I was appointed to be the faculty athletics representative, which worked out well because when I got to Keene State, I had a rapport with the faculty because they were like, oh, wow, she was a faculty member, so she gets it. She totally understands. So if I wasn't voluntold, I wouldn't have had that opportunity and be able to speak that academic language. So learn what you can in that role. You may not be happy in that particular role when you're taking on these added responsibilities, but I'm telling you, learn as much as you can because you, at some point in your life and in your career, you'll come back around to that and say, wow, I'm glad that I went through that experience. You may not be happy about it while you're going through it, but when you've kind of gotten on the other side, you'll recognize how that experience has helped you. So learn as much as you can, bloom where you're planted, but go where you're celebrated and not tolerated.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be the thing at the end of this. That's gonna be what I take away from it. And that's thank you so much for sharing that story because oftentimes we think about the when you say transitions voluntold, it's like, oh man, it's an amazing thing or this opportunity to take on more so you can grow. But sometimes you take on more and you feel like you're stunted in
Right.
certain aspects, and so you have to really look at the silver lining. Okay, they're giving me more. It's maybe not ideal. It's maybe not something I'm particularly prepared for, but can I take something of value here in this moment, which will allow me that I can reflect on as I continuously move forward. Like you maybe see that shift as a hurdle, but not necessarily as a stopgate. Like it's not going to prevent you
Right.
from keeping
Right.
moving. It's good.
Right. So
Awesome.
true. Very true.
Awesome. So, we spent a lot of time talking about the obvious things in terms of transition. We talked about like the skill set, like questions you need to ask, evaluations, the analyzing, aligning, and acting. Can you talk a little bit about the emotional side? You touched on it a bit in terms of how this can be an emotional journey as you transition, whether you're at your alma mater and you have those relationships there, and you got to make a shift, or a shift happens where a boss leaves and you have a relationship with that supervisor, and then now you have
Hmm.
to create a new relationship, and you don't know how to go about doing it. Can you talk a little bit about that emotional piece? How you handle that? How do you manage it when you're taking on a new role?
So it's hard. And I'm going to be completely honest. If you are happy where you are, and I've been happy at pretty much every job that I've had. I mean, obviously you're going to have good days and bad days at different stops in your career, but I pretty much loved what I do and loved all the students that I interacted and worked with, and the parents and alums and everyone else. So it is hard to make that switch when you're leaving behind something that you care so much about, especially when if you have spouses or partners or children that's involved and you're uprooting them as well. That
Mm.
I mean that weighs on you too. I mean, making that switch from even from Johnson C. Smith to St. Augustine's, and I'm not sure if I ever shared this publicly, but I will today, was my husband was doing very well in Charlotte, and he had just signed a contract for his teaching gig where he had to be there for 3 years. He was 6 months in when this position came at St. Augustine. And I took the job, and he did not want me to take the job. So for 2.5 years, we were in a commuter marriage where he lived in Charlotte and I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina with our 5-year-old son at the time. So I tell people all the time that was difficult when your spouse is saying one thing, it's better to move in this direction. So what do you do? Luckily, and shout out to Dr. Diane Bordley Suber, who was the former president of St. Augustine's University, who recognized that a happy home makes a happy employee. So she helped me be able to find employment for my husband, and it just so happened to be at St. Augustine's University. So that worked out well as an opening came up, and that went well there. Then, so, okay, we're there. We're there for 6 years. We're doing well. He's doing well. He loses his job at St. Augustine's on some political foolishness that I won't even talk about. Then I go in, to my transition. This all happened in 2015. Now, Keene State comes. And even though he's like, yes, let's go to Keene State, now you have to factor in our son, who's just finished in 7th grade, who's been in this school system for the last 7 years. And now we're uprooting him to take, moving way across, way up north. I mean, honestly, Torian, I didn't even know where New Hampshire was on the map, quite honestly, when I took this job. So, here we are having to move up north, and it's uprooting and affecting him. We're realizing that children are resilient. So we make this emotional trip, leaving all of our family, our friends, my sorority, my run sisters, my church, my friends, just everything that I've known at HBCU land. And here I moved to this predominantly white institution in predominantly white, 92% white New Hampshire. And my son has to go through this as well. So there's the emotional journey, emotional part that is attached to that. And then now I take this job at Dartmouth. And now but I can't uproot my son because now he's in 10th grade. So I can't take him out of school, and I'm making the commute. So there's all these different factors that come into play. But at the end of the day, you got to trust your intuition. I'm a spiritual person. I'm not necessarily religious, but I'm spiritual. And I always say, you can't ask God to order your steps if you're not willing to move your feet. And that's how I made this transition into going to Dartmouth, because I was happy at Keene State. I wasn't looking for a job, despite what people think, oh, she's leaving to go to an Ivy League school. Dartmouth wasn't even on my radar. But this opportunity came, and I recognized what me being in this position can do for people coming after me. It's not necessarily for me, but if I do a good job, that means another Black female or ethnic minority female will be given the opportunity to be in a higher level position in athletics. So it is emotional, but trust your intuition. And whatever spiritual or higher power you believe in, ask that person, that power, that the universe, as my sister would say, for guidance. And, try your best to do the best that you possibly can do. But it is absolutely emotional, and there's nothing wrong with being emotional about leaving some place or starting something new, because I think we're all human and we all go through that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you definitely took us to church. I know you said, spiritual religion. You took us to church. Can you say that quote one more time about if you're not asking God to
Oh,
order
yes.
One more time, please.
Yeah, so basically, you can't ask God to order your steps if you're not willing to move your feet. So I can't say a prayer to God like, please provide me with whatever it is. I want this new job. And the job comes, but it's in Wyoming, and you're a Southerner. So now I don't want to take that job because it's somewhere where I'm not comfortable. But you got to be willing to move your feet, because if you ask Him to guide you and move you, you've got to be willing to lift your feet up and say, you know what, I trust you. Just like I trusted God to take this job at Keene State. He said, yeah, I'm taking you to New Hampshire. I didn't say I was keeping you at Keene State. And here I am in New Hampshire, but now I'm at Dartmouth. So you got to be willing to move your feet throughout this process.
Right. Right. No, great. That's great. Thank you so much for repeating that.
You're welcome.
We're getting to the end of our questions, so I'll just let the audience attendees know that, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. We'll continue with our questions, but want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to ask Christine a question that you have on your heart or on your mind right now. So you talked a bit about Harry Sheehy, where he was very intentional about wanting to have an ethnic minority woman on his staff, and specifically not just on his staff, on his senior staff. And so, but you often you want to make sure that his intention was to have it so that that person can have a voice. But often we find our times where we're looking at it where people are being put in positions because they don't have, and they're like, okay, well, we need a minority, so they put them in a position just to say, hey, we have this person, or they feel like they check a box. How do you go about avoiding being seen as a token hire, whether it be for being a person of color, for being a woman, especially with the senior woman administrator designation, where often we fail to realize that it's just a designation, it's not your role?
That's right. That is so true. So being the token. So the first thing is I don't look at myself, and hopefully no one else looks at themselves as a token, because if you do look at yourself as a token, or if you've been hired to be the token, you probably shouldn't be working at that particular environment or that particular department. So for me, it's a matter of being prepared and recognizing that if your student athlete population is diverse, then the people who are making the decisions should also be diverse. You can't have a bunch, and I said this to Harry and others as I was interviewing. I said, are you guys ready for this change? Because I'm not a stereotypical Ivy League person. I mean, I'm not even from the United States officially. I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands. So here am I, this island girl who is, went to historically Black college. So I bring a totally different mindset and charisma and personality than what was currently in place, even from the person who I was replacing. So I asked him, I said, Harry, are you sure you're ready for all this jelly? Because that's what I'm bringing at this point. And, he laughed, obviously, and he said, yes, we are. We want a diverse perspective. We want someone who obviously is skilled and is talented and has the knowledge, but who also brings a different set of skills. And that's something that I brought. I mean, I said this to Harry. So the reality is, if you hire me, you look and you can check a lot of boxes: Black, female, doctorate, sitting AD, academic experience. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I said, I check a lot of boxes for you. However, it's not a matter of checking boxes. It's a matter of the impact that I can make for these student athletes throughout our recruiting process. I was telling our coaches, you would be crazy to not use me throughout your recruiting process, because I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I have a teenage son who's eventually going to be going through the same process. I can relate to a lot of some of your minority students who are coming and are looking to say, okay, well, where are the people that look like my child? And so I have been used a lot in the recruiting process, but at the same time, it's just really important for us to be able to utilize all of our knowledge and all of our diverse skill set. And again, it's not a matter of just diversity, it's also about inclusion. And I know I have a voice. Harry listens to me. We all listen to each other. And even though I'm new, I ask questions, but at the end of the day, I know I have a voice, and I know I'm valued and I'm respected here. So it's not really being the token. And I know some people feel like they're the token, but how do you use that? And I want to be able to use it for the next person, the person that comes after me, to be able to say, we had a dynamic person in Christine Kelly, and hopefully the other people will be given an opportunity because I've done a good job. And that's my plan, is to be able to leave some sort of lasting impact where people coming after me could be able to go for it, because it's all about each one or reach one. And that's, if I'm that one person that I started, somebody had to start somewhere. Rosa Parks had to sit at the back of the bus so that we could all have a little bit more freedom and those types of things. So at the end of the day, I'm excited to be here at Dartmouth, and I know I have a voice, and I know it's something that's valued and respected.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll
You're
go to
welcome.
one of our first questions. So,
Sure.
how can conventions like MOA, NACTA be used to strategically transition in athletics?
Well, one of the things that I thought was key is if you can get yourself some way somehow on a panel, even if you're not the panelist, maybe becoming a moderator, because that's how you put yourself out there where people can see, oh man, Torian he's really articulated and he's really knowledgeable. Where is he at now? Ooh, who's that guy? That's how that gets people's minds going. And while you're there, you're networking. So, and I say that very seriously to say when there are these different events, networking receptions that has alcohol, so I'm taking some of these people to school now. You can't get drunk
Right.
like some other people. Understand that this is networking. This isn't a matter for you to go have 5 free drinks on the Moa dime. Because if I'm an employer, I'm saying, that's not somebody I want to hire because this is how he or she acts when they're out there. So I had to put that disclaimer out there. But when you're at these conventions, like I said, if you can be a panelist, if you can be a moderator, if you can introduce yourself and stand up, ask questions. If you're sitting in a session, ask a question that's impactful so that whoever that moderator is or whoever the panelist is or somebody else in the room may say, oh, wow, who is that person? Oh, man, and do something or say something impactful that will make the hiring or the potential employers want to hire you and remember you. So if you can't get on a panel, if you can't be a moderator, ask questions. I know as I've been on several panels where people have asked me, for me to be their mentor and all of that. A great mentor-mentee relationship goes both ways. And the reality is, Torian, you could probably only mentor 1 or 2 people with your schedule and the same with me. So I'm trying to be intentional about the people who I select to be a mentee and vice versa. And we just don't have it to be able to do it with everyone. So everyone may not be able to be a mentor, but they may be able to advocate for you. As you said, the difference between mentor and advocate. So hopefully that answers your question, and getting involved, finding ways to ask questions and making you known.
Yeah. No, that's a great response to the question. I would just add to that, like you alluded to with the mentor mentee aspect, where once the higher you go, the more difficult it becomes to touch everybody that you meet. And so I often tell those who are coming behind me, one, don't get discouraged when you go to a convention and you get somebody's information, you reach out to them, and it may take a couple weeks before they get back to you.
Right.
There's that consistency and that follow up that you need to be hungry. There's going to be that aspect
Right.
of, okay, the mentorship may be something where it may take several months or maybe even a year before that it becomes that reciprocal type of, okay, yeah, I can have a touch point with someone. But if you maintain the course and really try to be intentional about who you want to be mentored by. That's a key thing, where you're going to meet
Right.
a lot of people at these conventions, but being strategic about, okay, do I need to meet everybody in the room? Do I need to just go around shaking hands and introduce myself? Versus if I meet,
Right.
that one person who I made a connection with, a sincere connection, then I can cultivate a relationship in order to have that once this convention ends and once I continue to move in my career, as well as tracking on that person's career as well. So that's
So
a great.
true.
Next question is, what advice would you give a woman of color in middle management positions who is struggling with the transition and feeling unsupported by other women of color in the organization? Wow. Yeah.
Woo! Wow. That is loaded. Feeling unsupported by other women of color.
Mm.
Um, Everybody doesn't support everyone, regardless. All black women don't support all black women. All black men don't support all black men. I mean, that's just the reality that's there. What you try to do is find someone that can support you or advocate for you. And it may, like you said, Torian, it may take a couple rounds of trying to find that. And then also realizing that your mentors or advocates don't have to look like you. You can
Right.
have mentors and advocates who are white men, white women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women, Asian. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Find that person that, if they're in a role that you want to be in, try to find someone in that role. Network within Women Leaders. Women Leaders is a huge organization that has several people that are out there. There's a saying that goes, and and people may take this the wrong way, and hopefully they don't. But something, people want to, there's a saying that goes that people want to see you doing well, just not better than them. And sometimes the reality is that that can exist as to why some of those particular women, maybe whatever it is that they're doing at that point. So find some other people that are out there that can help. It's unfortunate that may not be the case, or the reality is those same women may just be busy, to your point, and they're not, holding you back, but they just may be busy and not really having the opportunity and the time to really dedicate to that mentor relationship, or that to be able to help support and advance you. So if you get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8 times. Yeah. Because that's how this business is.
Right. No, absolutely. To that point, probably one of the biggest mentors of the person who I kind of look to in terms of trying to inhabit those leadership styles is actually somebody that we both know, Victoria Chun, who's the athletic director at Yale. So Vicki Chun was the AD at Colgate, who is Asian woman, heavily engaged in women leaders in a multitude of organizations, and someone who she will let you know, she was like, Torna, I'm not an African American male, but she is a huge advocate and a huge driving force in terms of providing not just women, but those who are underrepresented in particular areas, providing them with opportunities to be successful and have a seat at the table. And so when I think about her, as well as my direct supervisor when I was there, Anne-Marie Guglieri, who are 2 women who one is a minority, one isn't, but who are both invested in seeing me grow, not just for the sake of being somebody who's in this industry, but for African American, but as well as being an African American male, ensuring that, like you said, that it may be something where I'm here in this position currently, so that when I move on, people can really reflect on the fact of, Torian did a great job, so let's get somebody like him that looks like him, the same opportunity, and allow them to grow as well. So I think that's a huge point that you make. Next question we have here. How does your healthy habits assist you? How do your healthy habits assist you in your leadership?
Ooh, my healthy habits. So one, as most people know, I love working out. Like, I love fitness. I love talking about it. I love doing it because it's one, I'm competing against myself. So as athletic people, we're very competitive. I think that's just who we are by nature. So the fact that I can say, all right, today I started deadlifting at 150 and now I'm up to 300. I'm like, woohoo, I can do this. But part of that too is it shows our athletes that I am just as concerned with my health and my well-being as I am with every other part of my life. So if they're up at 5:30 a.m. and they're, cringing, oh my God, I have this 6 a.m. lift, I'm like, yeah, I lifted at 5. So been there, done that. And it's not necessarily a complaint or, from them anymore, but really it has helped me connect with our staff. Because again, I post about it quite often, because again, if I can help somebody else get into taking more control of their health, I feel like I've done my job. And that means somebody's going to lift heavier. They're going to go for one more rep. They're going to go, break a PR, whatever the case may be. It has truly helped me, one, get my mind right to start the day and kind of get focused. But it's just something that I enjoy doing, and I can still compete. So I compete with myself, and I love it when I hit PR. So hopefully the next goal is 315 on the deadlift. I said I was going to stop at 300, but since I've hit 300, it's time to go on a little higher.
Okay. That reminds me, I have to go. As soon as I leave here, I'm going to come out this suit, and then I'm going to go downstairs. I got to go and get my lift in. So thank you, pushing 5 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'm already behind you 2 times. So,
there you go.
So the next question, how do you handle a passive aggressive leader who gives you credit for the good things that you bring to the table, but always has to throw in criticism about what they feel is something that you don't do well? Oh, that's a great question.
That is a very good question. For me, it's a matter of understanding positivity. So there's a great book that's out there, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And the second agreement is you never take anything personal, because nothing anyone says or does is because of you. It could be something that's happening in their life. And as hard as that may be, don't show your frustrations. Continue to do the work that you're supposed to do. If they're giving you credit, thank them for the credit. And if they're not, then understand you're not at work to just get the credit. And then recognize, again, where I said bloom where you're planted, but go where you're celebrated and not just tolerated. If you feel like you're being tolerated, if you feel like you're not being respected where you are, you need to ask yourself, is this the place where I need to be? And that's a hard question, because self-reflection and self-appraisal is hard at times. But recognize where you are, do the best that you can. Don't let it affect you, because again, it's about, you don't take things personal at work unless this is a best friend of yours, which I hope is not necessarily the case. But you just don't take things personal. Do the best that you can, because it can happen anywhere, whether it's at your current job, whether it's at home, whether it's at a future job. Those types of leaders exist in all organizations. So you can't just run from one to the other, but just continue to do the best that you can do and accept the credit when it comes and bask in that. But know that, I'm trying to remember the exact quote that a friend gave me. He's deceased now, but nothing is as good as it seems and nothing is as bad as it seems. Somewhere in the middle, reality falls. So take the good and enjoy the good when it happens. And when the bad happens, realize that too won't last forever.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's great advice in terms of that reality. It's somewhere right there in that middle, so
Yeah.
you don't necessarily get too high or too low when people are coming
Right.
at you with their thought process on your own work product. So
That's
next
right.
question: do you feel it's too late to transition in this industry at 30 plus years old? It talks about like the average new employees around this person who's asking the question are new graduates and are at least 5 to 10 years younger than the individual. So do you feel like there's a limit to when, like, okay, like after this age, I can't make a transition, that I can't move anymore because it's just going to be too difficult, or potentially it just I won't be able to achieve what I've set out to do?
No, not at all. I don't think there are age limits anywhere unless you set age limits and limitations on yourself. But again, are you willing to step outside of your comfort zone? Now, are you telling me you're 35 years old and willing to accept a GA job? Then if that's what you really want to do, then that's fine. But you may not be 35, and I'm just using coaching as an example, and you're jumping right into a football coaching and thinking you're going to jump right into an offensive coordinator position. Like, that's just probably not going to happen. But if you're willing to accept those jobs, the jobs are there. And I tell people all the time, if you do compliance, if you can do compliance and do it well, there's always a job, because that's not one of the areas that a lot of people love getting into. People like Torian do such a great job with it. Thank God there are people like Torian that exist. But that's definitely a great place to work and to start if that person is outside of athletics and is trying to get into athletics. I think that's a great place. Academic advising exists. There's so many different areas where you're not just going to jump right into becoming a senior associate or an athletic director right off the bat without having any experience or knowing some people. So no, there's no age limit. Yes, the younger people, to a certain extent, they're hungry. And I hate to say it, but they're also the ones that are job hopping from one to the other, to the other, to the other. So it's, if you can find somewhere and you're passionate about it, you'll be able to do it without limiting yourself based on your age.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think about it, there is no age limit. It's only up here where people put those limitations on themselves. To follow up, there was another question that talks about transitioning into athletics when you're not in the industry. So you talked a little bit about, in terms of the areas, in terms of compliance, in terms of academics, kind of some of the internal pieces. But how would one go about like reaching out to individuals, making those connections? Like, is there a particular way or best course of action for individuals who are looking to figure out, okay, like I know I don't have any connection to athletics, but I want to get into the industry. How do I go about entering that realm?
So if you're on social media, there are tons of people that you can follow on social media to just kind of follow their path and see what they're doing. There are organizations. There's Moaa, there's NACDA, there's NACMA, there's Women Leaders. There are all of these organizations. You may have to finance it, but find yourself at the different conventions that exist. I always say NACDA is a great one to go to, because for one fee, you can attend all of these different subsets of organizations under the NACDA umbrella. So that gives you an opportunity to really meet and engage with people. Don't just limit yourself to just NCAA. There are junior colleges out there. There are NAIA schools. There's so many different, there's high schools, quite honestly. There's so many different charter schools, prep schools. There's so many different areas that people can get involved in to really get their foot in the door. And at worst, you figure something that you don't want to do. So don't limit yourself by saying, all right, I live in the South and I only want jobs in the South. Well, you may not get a job in the South. You may have to go to Iowa or Washington State or Minnesota or wherever. And you just really can't put limitations on yourself. So try your best to get to any of those different conventions if you can. Learn as much as you can. Meet as many people as you can. And like I said, you may need to finance it. You may have 2 to 3 people that y'all can come together and help drive down together and share the cost and go to the event. But definitely don't limit yourself to just one area and keep trying. Like I said, if you get knocked down or told no 7 times, get up 8 times. And you just get, everyone isn't told yes on the first one. It took me, I think, 5 or 6 AD interviews to get my first AD job. But you have to keep trying. You don't stop when a kid is learning to walk. He or she doesn't stop when they fall the first time. They get back up and they keep going until they can learn to walk.
Right. Yeah, no, like I said, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the 4 agreements earlier, which
Yeah.
is a fantastic book if anyone hasn't read that. What are some other books that you think might be helpful with like leadership growth or transitioning in the industry? Anything that really comes to mind?
So there is a book called Inspiring Leadership, and I have it written down here. It's by Fisher and Martini. I went to the NAFTA Spring Symposium in 2017, I believe it was, or 18, I can't remember. And they gave us a couple books, and that was one of them that has been amazing because it's a lot more about military types of things, but there's so many different analogies that apply to what we're doing. It talks about inspiration, it talks about communication and respect and all those different things. And for me, as I read certain things, it makes you ask questions to yourself about, does this transition work for me? Does this make sense? What is my intuition telling me? How do I understand if this is something that I need to do? So that was a really good book. And the best book of all, and I keep telling people, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, it's the Bible. It'll tell you a whole lot. So if you check me and, check my Twitter in the mornings, you'll see that I post something from Joel Osteen every day, just a little blurb to make you kind of think about it. But those are, for me, that works. So like I said, the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and then Inspiring Leadership by Fisher and Martini, and the Bible.
That's good. That's good. And I'll just offer another one out there is The First 90 Days by, I believe, Michael Watkins. So, as it alludes to, it kind of goes through a checklist of those first 90 days and some of the things that you run into as a new leader or as a new individual in the organization. And I've actually read that multiple times because each and every time I pick up something new that I didn't have when I previously read it, just because whenever you're going to a new position or a new title or just a new role, like you're realizing like, okay, well, what am I really taking into? Am I evaluating the culture? Am I, assuming too much about a particular position without necessarily knowing enough about it? And what's interesting is it says the first 90 days, it may take you more than 90 days to really get a full grasp of everything that is encompassing in that new opportunity. So I find it interesting, like with that book, it's something where, it kind of gives you this guide, but you also understand that there's going to be different things that trip you up and you're like, you know what, let me go back and read it later on down the line. But I think that's another great book to offer. So we're actually, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I add one last thing? I just wanted to say, and I meant to mention this earlier, when you talk about researching the organization prior to you accepting a position there, also look at the financial stability of the institution, because there are a lot of schools, particularly in New England, but it's happening across America, that are closing. And the worst thing for you to do is take a job just because it's a job and not realizing that institution may not be on solid financial footing. So do your research, make sure that institution is on solid financial footing before you step into something and then you find out a few months later the institution is closing or you're being furloughed or anything such as that. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there as well. Because I saw yesterday Southern Vermont College has decided to close its doors, and that's probably institution number 8 or 10, something like that, in the New England area alone over the last couple of years that are closing its doors. So just always look at the financial stability of that institution.
No, that's a huge point. So thank you so much.
No
Any
problem.
last words? We're actually right at the 2 o'clock. Excuse me, 2 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock East Coast time. Hour. Any
Yes.
last words that you'd like to provide for our attendees?
Just again, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8. Continue to push forward. We have all been told no. Tori and I'm sure can both, and I can both tell you the number of times that we've been told no. But don't let that deter you. Be positive. Be who you are. Do the best that you can do while you're there. Don't be road, which is retired on active duty. Don't be on the job, get paid, and you're not doing the job. So continue to work hard. Reach out, find somebody that can advocate for you, but give them something to advocate for. Because what Torian and I won't do is put our names on someone that can't live up to what it is we're saying about you. So do your best work, and good will come back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. No, so thank you so much, Christine. This is absolutely amazing. On behalf of Moaa and its leadership, thank you so much for taking time to share with us your expertise. That's all the time we have for you all today. If you were unable to get your question answered or you have one on, feel free to email me at thouston. That's Torian, the first initial T, Houston at rice.edu, and we'll do our best to make sure that you get a response back for that. If you have any questions regarding Moaa membership in general, please don't hesitate to contact Alexis Scott and Julie Work in the NACDA National Office at 440-892-4000. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Safe travels as you make your way around as we get ready for the spring break time period and the NCAA championships. And we look forward to seeing you all down at the Moaa Symposium June 8th and 9th in Orlando. And last but not least, as Christine would say, bloom where you're planted and go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. Thank you. Have a
There
wonderful
you
day.
go. Thank you.